Welcome, everybody, to the Economancer. Today, we're going to be discussing one of the core concepts in economancy, divination, or as mere mortals would call it, decision-making. As the high priest of the Economicon, my role is to play in promoting economic prosperity and stability through the manipulation of resources, management of systems, and creation and control of energy and power. And what better way to achieve these goals than by divining the best practices? In this video, we will explore the question of individual versus group decision-making, examining the strengths and weaknesses of each of these approaches, and how the Economancer must weigh these factors to make informed decisions for the betterment of the economy, especially with a focus on monetary policy. So we're going to start with the arguments for group decision-making. These are pretty simple. So we have increased diversity of ideas. So if you have decisions and they're made in a group setting, individuals will bring their own unique perspectives and experiences to the table, which can lead to a more informed and well-rounded decision, especially if you take it from like that postmodernist idea that there is a different set of knowledges and perspectives per person, and that broad set of knowledges and perspectives allow for a fuller picture of the really real pattern that we talked about in my video on the matrix. So better accountability. When decisions are made as a group, members are more likely to feel a sense of accountability to each other, and they are less likely to shirk their responsibilities. Now you can think of this as like you're working on a project in a group. There may be one person who's not doing their work, but that doesn't bog down the team enough that it's just not going to get done unless that person has like a very critical role. But if you diversified enough, then you probably shouldn't have that issue. So improve collaboration and communication. The act of making decisions as a group can help foster stronger working relationships and improve communication among team members. So if you have a bunch of disinterested individuals across from each other, that communication that they're going to have is very, very low, even if they do share a lot of those double contingencies. And it's because they don't know each other well enough. But once you start to learn someone and learn the group kind of dynamics, it makes those relationships a lot stronger. So what are the arguments for individual decision making? So first, they're faster. When decisions are made by a single individual, the process is often faster and less bogged down by conflicting opinions and lengthy discussions. Clear responsibility. When an individual makes a decision, they are accountable for the outcome, which can lead to a greater sense of ownership and pride in their work. This is really important when we're thinking about a governance system, right? So a king has clear responsibilities when he's making these decisions. He's fully accountable to the outcome. But when we look at our system now and we see so many people are upset at the current workings of the government, they don't have any one individual to blame. They blame this amalgamation of people known as Congress, as the legislators and stuff like that. And so it makes it harder for you to give clear responsibility and full accountability for the outcome because there's no one owner. It's just a group of people. So, more decisive action. Since the decision-making process is streamlined, individuals are often able to take more decisive action. Again, this leads to these quicker results. It leads to understanding the decision-making process. Now, there are some critics out there that say that group decision-making could lead to groupthink, where individuals conform to the opinions of the majority rather than using critical thinking skills. But this is a possibility. It's a potential issue in group decision-making processes. But it's easily mitigated through active facilitation, encouraging diverse perspectives, and promoting open and honest communication. You have to understand that there's a difference between groupthink and then one member of a group being more persuasive than the rest. But that doesn't mean that the dissenters or the non-voters or whatever in this group don't play into that decision-making process, because there's still probably like a leader on the against side, right? The leader of the dissenters. This is especially important when you look at the Supreme Court and how it works. Now, critics of individual decision-making, they think that this leads to tunnel vision, a lack of empathy, as individuals may not consider the opinions or needs of others. But here's something to think about. This can also be mitigated by encouraging individuals to seek out and consider inputs from others before making a decision and by promoting a culture of open and respectful communication. Just because the decision maker is by himself in this process doesn't mean that he's the only one with an epistemic standpoint taken into consideration here. This is the importance of being a CEO, right? This is an individual who makes a single decision. But to say that his decision isn't without other communicative actions is just silly. So both group decision-making have their weaknesses and strengths. The most effective approach will depend on the specific context and situation. In some cases, a group approach may be more effective, while in others, individual decision-making may be the better choice. Ultimately, it is important to weigh the pros and cons and choose the approach that will achieve the desired outcome. So we're going to talk about a specific context where the divination is of utmost importance, and that is in monetary policy decision-making. In this domain, there are generally 3 accepted divination rights. The single decision-maker model. This is a type of monetary policy committee is led by a single individual, such as a central bank governor, who has the ultimate authority to make monetary policy decisions. Many central banks, including the Federal Reserve and the European Central Bank, use this model, though it's not definitively a single decision maker. We'll get to that. The collegial model. This type of monetary policy committee comprises of several individuals, typically central bank governors or board members who have equal voting rights and make decisions collectively by majority vote. Central banks use this model in Canada, the United Kingdom, and Sweden. Then there's the deliberative model. This type of monetary policy committee is similar to the collegial model, but it emphasizes discussion and debate among members before making decisions. This is used by central banks such as the Reserve Bank of Australia and the Bank of Japan. Then there is the U.S.'s Federal Open Market Committee, which is considered autocratically collegial, where the chairman exerts significant enough control to be the primary decision maker, despite it being a collective decision-making group. However, an autocratically collegial monetary policy committee does allow for dissent, which could put pressure on the chairman to change the decision, or more likely be more amicable to dissenters' opinions. Now, one of the things that I would like to see introduced in the FOMC and this Monetary Policy Committee would be dissenting opinions being broadcasted as much as the chairman's, though I do understand that there are some significant problems with that when it comes to forward guidance and stuff like that. But I think it would be an interesting thing, a lot like the Supreme Court does. So, the practitioner of economancy, Alan Blinder, has dedicated much time in understanding these questions. His 2 major works are 2 Heads Better Than One, Monetary Policy by Committee. This is an experiment designed to see how group decision-making differed from individual decision-making processes. And then the other one is Monetary Policy by Committee, Why and How, where the authors provide theoretical support for monetary policy committees. So let's look at our 2 Heads Better Than One. The results of this experiment show that monetary policy conducted by a committee of 2 individuals outperforms monetary policy conducted by a single individual, with the committee achieving lower inflation and higher economic growth. The authors conclude by noting that their findings suggest that monetary policy by committee can be effective. Still, it is essential to carefully design the committee structure and the decision-making process to ensure that the benefits of collective decision-making are realized while minimizing those potential challenges that I brought up earlier. Overall, this paper highlights the benefits and the challenges of monetary policy by committee and suggests that well-designed committees can improve the performance of monetary policy. In Monetary Policy by Committee, Why and How, the author provides a reasoning for decisions in committee to diverge because some believe that based on Homo economicus, all members should conclude on the same decision. And you can think of this, if we all would have the same conclusion because we're all Homo economicus, why would we need a committee to come to a conclusion? So he makes these very clear, and these are similar to the arguments I made earlier. Different economic models and forecasting methods. So these members of these monetary policy committees may have different views on the state of the economy and likely the impact of monetary policy based on the models and forecasting methods they use, whether they come from a monetarist school, a market monetarist school, neo-Keynesian, so on and so forth, leads into different perspectives and expertise. Members of a monetary policy committee may have a different area of expertise and focus on different aspects of the economy, leading to different conclusions about the appropriate course of action. There's always this good argument between business cycle theorists and long-term or long-run growth theorists. The business cycle gives you these fluctuations, whereas these long-run models say, hey, some of this is just able to be dealt with without worrying about it. And so there's those different perspectives and expertise that come into being a member of these monetary policy committees. Different values and priorities. Members of a monetary policy committee may have different values and priorities, such as a greater emphasis on inflation control versus employment reduction, which can lead to different conclusions about the best course of action. Different data and information. Members of a monetary policy committee may have access to different data and information, which can lead to different conclusions about the state of the economy and the appropriate policy response. Different communication and presentation of the issue. Some members might have better communication skills and the ability to present the issue clearly and compellingly, which could influence the group's decision. Notable on this is Paul Volcker, who is considered one of the most persuasive president or governors, chairman of the board, whatever you want to call it, in the history of the FOMC. Last, different heuristics. Blinder notes the growing literature on the efficacy of diverse decision-making in the collective intelligence of diverging mental processes allows for a more holistic calculation of complex problems, which is something I brought up earlier. So, Blinder provides some boundaries on what optimal monetary policy committees would look like, suggesting that a monetary policy should be independent of political interference and have the freedom to make decisions based on its mandates and objectives without being constrained by political considerations. Blinder also highlights the importance of having a well-functioning decision-making process, including a well-designed voting structure and rules, a clear communication policy, and a transparent decision-making process. Finally, Blinder suggests that a monetary policy committee should be flexible and adaptable and be prepared to adjust its decision-making process, communication policy, and forecasting methods to respond to changing economic conditions. In conclusion, the choice between individual and group decision-making is a complex and nuanced issue in economancy. Each approach has its advantages and disadvantages, and as the Economancer, I must use their expertise to weigh these factors and choose the method that will best achieve their goals. Whether through individual or group decision-making, the ultimate goal of Economancy is to promote economic prosperity and stability, using the knowledge and skills to analyze economic systems and implement these policies that encourage good monetary policy and growth. Thank you for watching the video, and we hope you have gained valuable insight into this important divination task of economancy.